What if I told you that the people who hurt you the most were actually mirrors of your own unconscious mind? And what if I told you that the reason you attract narcissists, manipulators, or toxic relationships is not because you're weak, but because you carry a hidden light inside you so powerful? It terrifies those who live in darkness? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may completely change the way you see yourself, your past, and even the people who wounded you the most. But here's the part nobody talks about. The shadow of your mind, the part you hide, deny, and bury, is secretly running your life. Until you face it, it controls you. Once you face it, it frees you, Carl Jung once said. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life. And you will call it fate. Think about that for a second. How many times have you said to yourself, why does this always happen to me? Why do I always attract the same kind of people? That's not random. It's your unconscious pulling you into situations so you'll finally confront the parts of yourself you've ignored. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever felt drawn to someone who later turned out to be toxic, but you couldn't explain why you ignored the red flags? That was your shadow at work. It's not punishment, it's psychology. The narcissist you meet, the manipulator you fall for, the friend who betrays you, they are all characters sent by your unconscious to reveal what you have not yet healed. Wait until you hear this next part, because it might sting. Empaths, those who feel everything so deeply, who give endlessly, who suffer silently, are often carrying unresolved shadows of their own. Empaths attract narcissists not just by accident, but because their boundaries are blurred by unhealed wounds. A narcissist senses this weakness like a predator senses blood in the water. But here's the twist. That very sensitivity that leaves you vulnerable to exploitation is also the very thing that can make you one of the most powerful healers alive if you learn how to master it. This is where dark psychology enters. Dark psychology isn't just about manipulation tactics, about the unconscious drives that push humans into power struggles. Narcissists manipulate because deep down, they are terrified of their own emptiness. They inflate themselves not because they're strong, but because they fear collapsing into nothingness if they ever face who they really are. On the flip side, empaths often overgive because they fear rejection. They think, if I give enough, maybe I'll finally be loved. Maybe I won't be abandoned again. But this cycle of giving and taking is not just about relationships, it's about shadow work. It's about your psyche pulling you toward the very situations that hurt you, not to punish you, but to force you into growth. Here's a story you may relate to. Imagine a child who grows up in a home where love is conditional. They learn quickly that their value is tied to how much they can please others, how quiet they can be, how little space they take up. Fast forward into adulthood, and what happens? They become the perfect match for someone who craves control, a narcissist. And suddenly the dance begins. One takes. The other gives. One demands. The other sacrifices. And beneath it all, the unconscious repeats the same old wound, hoping one day you'll wake up and say, no more. But here's the secret. The moment you become conscious of the pattern, it begins to break. The moment you stop saying, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what part of me is this trying to reveal? That's when transformation begins, and this is exactly why Jung called shadow work the royal road to individuation. You cannot become your true self until you face your shadow. You cannot find wholeness until you stop running from the parts of yourself that scare you. Now, let's take this deeper. Have you ever noticed that the qualities you dislike most in others are often qualities you secretly carry in yourself? Think of someone who irritates you. Maybe they're arrogant, manipulative, selfish. Before you point the finger too quickly, ask yourself, where do I carry this energy inside me? Maybe you're not arrogant, but maybe you crave recognition. Maybe you're not manipulative, but maybe you bend the truth to avoid conflict. Maybe you're not selfish, but maybe you neglect yourself to please others, which is just another distortion of self-worth. This next truth will shock you. Every enemy you faced in life, every narcissist, every betrayal was not just an enemy, but a teacher. Your shadow sent them. Not because you deserved pain, but because you deserved to awaken. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a choice. You can keep running from your shadow, keep repeating the same cycles, keep wondering why life feels unfair. Or you can stop, turn around, and walk straight into the darkness within. Because on the other side of that darkness is not destruction, it is freedom, and over the next chapters, we're going to go deeper into this. We'll uncover the hidden contracts between empaths and narcissists. We'll expose the tricks of dark psychology that keep you trapped. We'll walk through Jung's shadow work step by step. And by the end of this series, you won't just understand your wounds, you'll understand your power. But first, let's pause and ask the question that opens everything. What is your shadow trying to teach you? Think about this for a moment. Have you ever wondered why certain people walk into your life as if they were scripted to play a role? Almost like destiny put them there, but instead of bringing peace, they brought chaos. Here's the shocking truth: those encounters were not random. They were written in the ink of your unconscious. And until you understand the hidden contract beneath them, you'll keep repeating the same painful story. But here's the part nobody talks about. When an empath meets a narcissist, there's an invisible agreement formed between their shadows. One says, "I need someone to give me everything so I never have to face my emptiness." The other says, "I need someone to take from me so I can feel valuable, even if it costs me my soul." It's not conscious, it's unconscious. It's not evil, it's unhealed. And until those wounds are addressed, the cycle continues. Let's break this down with Carl Jung's language. He called this process projection, the way we throw our unconscious needs, wounds, and desires onto other people without realizing it. The narcissist projects their shame and worthlessness outward by inflating themselves and demeaning others. The empath projects their fear of abandonment outward by clinging, overgiving, and trying to fix what can't be fixed. Wait until you hear this. Because it may feel like looking in a mirror you've avoided, the empath's giving is not always pure. Sometimes it is manipulation too. Not in the same cold, calculated way as the narcissist, but in the form of, if I give you enough love, maybe you'll finally give it back. Maybe you'll finally see me. Maybe you'll finally heal. And beneath that hope lies the child's wound, the desperate hunger to be chosen. To be enough, this next truth will shock you in many cases. The empath and the narcissist are two sides of the same coin. Both carry deep wounds of rejection. Both fear abandonment. Both are terrified of facing their own shadow. They just choose different masks. One wears the mask of power. The other wears the mask of sacrifice. But both masks are defenses against the same core wound. If people see who I really am, they won't love me. Here's an example. Imagine a little boy who grows up with a father who tells him he's weak. To survive, he buries his tenderness and builds a mask of dominance. That boy becomes a man who controls, belittles, and manipulates because beneath it all, he still fears being seen as weak. Now imagine a little girl who grows up with a mother who only praises her when she's helpful. She learns her worth is tied to service. She grows into a woman who gives endlessly, tolerates abuse, and calls it love because deep down, she still fears being seen as unworthy unless she's useful. When these two meet, their shadows lock together like puzzle pieces. The man gets his endless supply of validation. The woman gets her endless chance to prove her worth. And on the surface, it looks like attraction. But beneath it, it's trauma recognizing trauma. But here's the part nobody tells you. This contract isn't meant to destroy you, it's meant to awaken you. Because at some point the empath breaks. They realize, no matter how much I give, it will never be enough. And in that breaking, a choice is born. Either collapse back into the cycle, or finally walk away and face the shadow within. That's the moment of transformation. That's the moment the unconscious becomes conscious. Carl Jung called this the individuation process, the journey of becoming whole. And individuation always begins with confrontation. Confronting the truth of who you are, confronting the reality of what you've tolerated, confronting the wounds you've carried since childhood. Without that confrontation, there is no growth. But with it, there is freedom. Now let's connect this to dark psychology. Narcissists are masters of exploiting the empath's wound. They study your triggers without even knowing they're studying them. They sense your fear of abandonment and weaponize it. If you leave me, No one else will love you. They sense your hunger for validation and use it like a leash. You're only valuable if you do what I want. They sense your guilt and trap you in it. After everything I've done for you, you owe me. But here's what flips the script. Once you become conscious of the contract, you can tear it up. You can say, no more. I refuse to let my shadow write my story. I refuse to let my wounds dictate my worth. And the moment you do that, the narcissist loses power. Because their power was never real, it was borrowed from your unconscious agreement. Think about that. The entire cycle depended on you staying asleep to your shadow. The moment you wake up, the illusion collapses. And this isn't just about toxic relationships, it's about every area of your life. How many times have you taken jobs that drained you because you believed you weren't worthy of more? How many friendships have you maintained out of fear of being alone? How many times have you silenced your voice to keep the peace? Each time it was your shadow writing the contract. But here's the good news. Contracts can be rewritten. You are not bound to repeat the past. You are not doomed to attract the same people forever. The moment you face your shadow, you reclaim your pen. You stop being a character in someone else's script and start authoring your own, and that's where shadow work comes in. Shadow work isn't about fighting the darkness, it's about integrating it. It's about acknowledging, yes, I have needs. Yes, I have wounds. Yes, I sometimes manipulate in subtle ways. But I am not ashamed of that. I will face it, own it, and transform it, because the shadow that is embraced becomes strength. The shadow that is denied becomes your cage. Let's pause here and ask a hard question. What contract is your shadow still holding on to? Who in your life feels like a mirror of your deepest wounds? And more importantly, are you ready to face what that mirror is showing you? Because in the next part, we're going to uncover exactly how shadow projection works in your daily life. And once you see it, you'll never unsee it again. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The people who trigger you the most are often the ones showing you the parts of yourself you refuse to see. And until you understand this, you'll keep blaming others while staying blind to the lesson life is trying to hand you. But here's the part nobody talks about. Projection isn't just about narcissists or toxic relationships. It happens everywhere, every single day. You project when you accuse others of being selfish while secretly resenting how much you've denied yourself. You project when you condemn arrogance, but deep down, you're terrified of claiming your own power. You project when you judge someone for being too emotional, while inside, you've buried feelings that are desperate to be expressed. Wait until you hear this, because it will completely reframe how you see conflict. Every irritation, every jealousy, every judgment you place on another person is a mirror. And that mirror doesn't lie. It reflects back to you the shadow you've disowned, Carl Jung once said. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Think about that. The anger you feel when someone cuts you off in traffic isn't just about the car. It's about the part of you that hates being powerless. The jealousy you feel when you see someone succeed isn't just about their success, it's about the part of you that's too afraid to chase your own dreams. The disgust you feel at someone else's arrogance? Maybe it's the part of you that's ashamed of your own desire to be recognized. This next truth will shock you. The shadow doesn't only project the dark, it also projects the light you've buried. That's why sometimes you meet someone and feel inexplicably drawn to them, almost enchanted. They embody qualities you've denied in yourself. The musician who inspires you? They're a mirror for your own suppressed creativity. The leader you admire? They're a reflection of your own hidden strength. What you reject in yourself, you condemn in others. What you repress in yourself, you idolize in others. Either way, it's projection, but here's the part nobody tells you. Most people never look into that mirror. They keep pointing the finger outward, never realizing 3 fingers are pointing back at them. And so life keeps sending them the same mirrors again and again, louder each time, until they're forced to face what they've ignored. Let's make this concrete with a story. Imagine Sarah, an empathic, kind-hearted woman who prides herself on being selfless. She despises selfishness in others. Every time someone puts themselves first, she feels disgust and anger. But beneath that reaction lies a hidden truth. Sarah has spent her whole life abandoning her own needs. She calls it generosity, but really it's fear that if she prioritizes herself, she lose love. So when she sees others doing what she secretly longs to do, her shadow flares up. She doesn't hate them. She hates the part of herself that has been silenced for years. Or take James. He looks down on people who chase money, calling them greedy and shallow. But secretly, James craves wealth. He wants freedom, security, the ability to provide for his family. His disdain isn't moral superiority, it's envy wearing a mask. His shadow whispers, "You want this too, but you're too afraid to admit it." And so he projects. Can you see the pattern? The shadow is like a child banging on the walls of your unconscious, saying, "Pay attention to me." But instead of listening, you accuse the people around you. You think they're the problem, but they're just the mirror. Now here's where dark psychology comes in. Manipulative people, whether narcissists, gaslighters, or abusers, know how to weaponize your projections. They study what you judge, what you crave, what you fear, and they turn it against you. If you secretly fear being abandoned, they'll threaten to leave. If you secretly crave validation, they'll withhold it until you beg. If you secretly long for freedom, they'll dangle it just out of reach. But here's the breakthrough. Once you see your projection, you take back the weapon. Nobody can use your shadow against you once you've faced it yourself. The moment you say, "Yes, I have selfishness in me. Yes, I crave recognition. Yes, I sometimes envy others," the shame dissolves. The mirror no longer hurts you, it teaches you. Think of it like this. The shadow is not a monster lurking in the dark. It's a suitcase you've been dragging behind you your whole life. And inside that suitcase are the parts of yourself you disowned to survive. The anger you weren't allowed to feel. The creativity you were told was silly. The power you were shamed for claiming. The vulnerability you were mocked for showing. Each time you project, the suitcase bursts open a little. Life is begging you, unpack this. Stop dragging it. Own it. But here's the part nobody tells you. Shadow work isn't about blaming yourself. It's not about saying, "Oh, it's all my fault." No, it's about radical honesty. It's about saying, "This is in me. And because it's in me, I have the power to transform it." That's where freedom begins. So let me ask you, who in your life irritates you the most? Who do you envy? Who do you admire to the point of obsession? Those people are not accidents. They are mirrors. They are the teachers your ego didn't ask for, but your soul desperately needs. And here's the real kicker. Until you learn to embrace those projections, you'll keep attracting the same dynamics. You'll keep meeting the same type of person, fighting the same battles, repeating the same story. Because the shadow won't stop knocking until you finally open the door. Wait until you hear this. Because in the next part, we're going to dive into the process of shadow integration, how to take these projections, these unconscious patterns, and actually reclaim them as power. This is where people who once felt broken discover their strength. This is where the empath becomes the empowered. And this is where the cycle finally breaks. Here's a truth that will challenge everything you thought you knew. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's your hidden ally. The very parts of yourself you've rejected, denied, or feared are the ones holding the keys to your greatest strength. But if you never open the door, you'll never step into that power. But here's the part nobody talks about. Integration isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. And wholeness is messy. It means saying, yes, I have light and darkness. Yes, I can be kind and cruel, giving and selfish, brave and terrified. It means allowing yourself to be fully human instead of performing the version of yourself you think others will. Except wait until you hear this, because most people who attempt shadow work make the same mistake. They try to fix their shadow, to scrub it clean like dirt on their skin. But the shadow isn't dirt. It's gold covered in mud. If you keep trying to wash it away, you lose the gold. The real work is excavation, not erasure. So how do you integrate your shadow? Let's walk through it step by step. Step 1. Awareness. You can't transform what you refuse to see. Start by noticing your triggers. Who irritates you? Who makes you jealous? Who fills you with admiration or disgust? Write their names down. Then ask, what are they showing me about myself that I don't want to admit? The answer will sting. That's how you know it's real. For example, if you hate arrogant people, maybe your shadow is hiding a deep hunger for recognition. If you envy someone's success, maybe your shadow is showing you your buried ambition. If you despise manipulators, maybe your shadow is pointing to the subtle ways you manipulate yourself with guilt and fear. Every trigger is a flashlight aimed at the places you've tried to keep dark. But here's the part nobody tells you. The more you resist that awareness, the more it grows in the dark. That's why people who deny their shadow often explode in unexpected ways. The good parent who suddenly rages. The loyal partner who suddenly betrays. The kind leader who secretly abuses power. When you ignore the shadow, it doesn't disappear, it waits. Step 2. Acceptance. Awareness without acceptance just turns into shame. Once you see your shadow, you have to say, yes, this is me, not, this is me forever, but this is part of me. Think of it like a scared child. If you keep yelling at the child to shut up, they'll scream louder. But if you hold them, they calm down. The shadow works the same way. This is the moment you stop saying, I shouldn't feel this way, and start saying, I do feel this way, and that's okay. Anger, jealousy, fear, lust, greed, these are human emotions. Denying them doesn't make you holy. It makes you divided. And a divided soul is easy to control. But an integrated soul is uncheckable. Step 3. Expression. Once you've accepted your shadow, you have to give it a voice. Journal your rawest thoughts. Scream into a pillow. Paint your rage. Dance your desire. Write the words you're too ashamed to say out loud. When you let your shadow express itself safely, it loses the need to sabotage your life. Think of it like pressure building in a sealed bottle. If you never open the cap, eventually it explodes. But if you release it little by little, you stay in control. That's what expression does. It gives the shadow healthy channels instead of destructive ones. But here's the breakthrough. When you express your shadow, you often discover hidden gifts. That anger you've suppressed, it can become courage, boundaries, leadership. That envy you buried, it can become ambition, drive, creation. That darkness you feared, it can become depth, compassion, empathy. The shadow is not poison. It's potential. Step 4. Integration. Integration is the final step, and it's about ownership. It's saying this is not just my shadow, it's my power. When you stop disowning parts of yourself, you stop scattering your energy. You become whole. Think of it like this. Imagine you've spent your whole life with broken mirrors, each reflecting only a fragment of who you are. One shows you as kind. Another shows you as intelligent. Another as angry. Another as scared. But when you gather all those mirrors together, you finally see the full picture. That picture isn't perfect, but it's real. And reality is more powerful than perfection. Let's bring this to life with a story. There was once a man named Elias, who lived as a priest in a small town. He was admired for his wisdom, his patience, his kindness. But deep inside, Elias carried a shadow. He had a temper, a desire for recognition, a craving for freedom. He suppressed it all in the name of virtue. One day a scandal erupted. Elias was accused of dishonesty. The town turned against him. And in his rage he finally snapped. He shouted, cursed, even struck someone who insulted him. For a moment he felt ashamed. But in that breaking, something unexpected happened. For the first time, Elias felt whole. He wasn't just the patient priest. He was human, flawed, fierce, real. From that day forward, Elias stopped performing perfection. He admitted when he was angry. He claimed his ambition. He laughed louder, cried deeper, loved harder. And the town, instead of condemning him, respected him more. Because he wasn't a mask anymore. He was a man. Here's the part nobody talks about. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with authenticity. Your shadow doesn't make you unlovable. It makes you relatable. It makes you real, but wait until you hear this, because in the next part, we'll dive into how the unintegrated shadow attracts manipulation, narcissists, and toxic dynamics into your life. Once you see this pattern, you'll never look at your relationships the same way again. Here's a question that might sting. Why do the same toxic people keep showing up in your life? Different faces, same patterns? The manipulator. The narcissist. The person who drains you, controls you, betrays you. You tell yourself, this time will be different, but somehow it never is. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. You're not cursed. You're not unlucky. You're unconscious. Your unintegrated shadow is pulling those people to you like a magnet. And until you face it, you'll keep reliving the same story. But here's the part nobody talks about. Toxic people don't just happen to us. They feed on what we refuse to face in ourselves. A narcissist can only control someone who denies their own worth. A manipulator can only succeed with someone who denies their own power. An abuser can only dominate someone who denies their own anger. The moment you integrate those shadows, the spell breaks. Wait until you hear this, because once you see how your shadow is involved, you'll never look at toxic relationships the same way again. Let's take the empath-narcissist dynamic, one of the most common traps. On the surface, it looks like opposites. The empath gives too much, the narcissist takes too much. But underneath, they're mirrors. The empath has disowned their shadow of selfishness, so they overgive. The narcissist has disowned their shadow of vulnerability, so they overtake. Together, they form a closed loop, giver and taker, rescuer and exploiter, victim and abuser. The empath says, I hate selfishness. The narcissist says, I hate weakness. But secretly, both are running from themselves. And so they find each other again and again until someone breaks the cycle. Here's a story to bring this to life. Maya grew up in a family where love was conditional. She learned that to be loved, she had to serve, to please, to erase herself. As an adult, she became the perfect partner, always giving, always sacrificing, always putting others first. Then she met Daniel, a man who seemed confident and charismatic. But beneath the charm, Daniel was controlling. He demanded constant attention, constant validation. He criticized Maya when she didn't meet his needs. To outsiders, it looked like Maya was a victim. But inside, Maya's shadow was at work. Her suppressed anger, her unclaimed right to say no, her hidden desire to be selfish, all of it made her vulnerable to Daniel's control. The relationship was not random. It was the mirror. Here's the part nobody tells you. Maya didn't escape Daniel by changing him. She escaped by changing herself. When she finally faced her shadow, the part of her that wanted to say, asterisk, I deserve, I choose, I matter, asterisk, the dynamic collapsed. Daniel's power vanished. Because manipulation only works when you play your role. This next truth will shock you. Toxic relationships are not punishments. They're invitations. They're life's brutal way of saying, look here. This is where you've abandoned yourself. If you keep asking, why do they hurt me? You'll stay trapped. The real question is, why do I allow it? And the answer always points to the shadow. Think about it. If you attract liars, maybe your shadow is your own dishonesty, those truths you've buried, those feelings you pretend not to have. If you attract users, maybe your shadow is your own suppressed selfishness, the part of you that longs to receive but is too ashamed to ask. If you attract abusers, maybe your shadow is your own denied power, the part of you that's terrified of your strength. Here's the twist. The people who hurt you are unconsciously helping you. They are mirrors, magnifying the shadow until you can't ignore it. The narcissist is teaching the empath boundaries. The manipulator is teaching the pleaser self-respect. The betrayer is teaching the loyalist to trust themselves instead of others. It's brutal, but it's sacred. But here's the part nobody talks about. Integration doesn't just protect you, it transforms the dynamic itself. When you claim your shadow, toxic people lose interest. They can't feed on you anymore. The narcissist looks for a new victim. The manipulator gives up. The abuser loses power. Why? Because they were never in control of you, they were only in control of the parts of you you refuse to own. Let's pause and make this practical. How do you know if your shadow is attracting toxic relationships? Look at your patterns. Do you always feel used? Do you always feel silenced? Do you always feel abandoned? Those aren't coincidences. They're signals. They point to the parts of you you've locked away. Do you want to break the cycle? Then stop asking, why are they like this? And start asking, what is this teaching me about myself? Because the lesson isn't out there, it's in here. Wait until you hear this, because in the next part, we'll go even deeper into how the shadow shapes identity itself. The roles you play, the masks you wear, the persona you show the world, they're all built on what you've buried. And once you see it, you'll realize you're not who you think you are. Here's the unsettling truth. The person you think you are is not who you really are. It's a mask, a carefully crafted identity, built not from your essence but from your survival. And until you understand this, you'll live your whole life as a character in a story someone else wrote. But here's the part nobody talks about. The mask you wear, the persona, as Carl Jung called it, wasn't chosen freely. It was formed by the shadows you disowned. Every trait you suppressed, every part of you buried, shaped the opposite role you perform for the world. Wait until you hear this, because it will change the way you see yourself forever. Think back to childhood. You weren't born with a mask. You were raw, unfiltered, whole. You cried when you were sad, laughed when you were happy, raged when you were angry. But slowly, the world taught you which parts of yourself were acceptable and which weren't. If you expressed too much emotion, maybe you were called dramatic. If you spoke too boldly, maybe you were told to be quiet. If you asked for too much, maybe you were labeled selfish. So what did you do? You buried those parts. You locked them in the shadow, and in their place you built the mask, the agreeable one, the achiever, the peacemaker, the strong one, the funny one. That mask became your way of surviving. But here's the catch. The mask is never the whole truth. It's only the performance you put on to be accepted. And the more attached you are to your persona, the more disconnected you are from your authentic self. Let's make this concrete. Take Alex, for example. Growing up, Alex was shamed for showing weakness. Don't cry, his father said. Be strong. So Alex built a mask of toughness. To the world, he looks confident, fearless, in control. But inside, Alex hides a terrified child who longs to be comforted. His mask isn't strength, it's armor. And every relationship he enters cracks against it. Or consider Emily. As a child, she was praised for being helpful, quiet, polite. She learned that love came from pleasing others. So she built a mask of the good girl. As an adult, Emily always smiles, always agrees, always sacrifices. But deep inside, her shadow is boiling with anger, resentment, and unmet desires. One day, that shadow erupts and Emily doesn't recognize herself. Here's the part nobody tells you. The mask is exhausting. You spend years holding it up, smiling when you don't feel like it, pretending you're fine when you're breaking inside, performing a role because you think that's the only way to be loved. But the cost of that mask is your soul. This next truth will shock you. The shadow is the blueprint for the mask. If you deny your selfishness, your mask will be the selfless one. If you deny your anger, your mask will be the calm one. If you deny your vulnerability, your mask will be the strong one. The persona is built on the graveyard of your rejected selves. But here's where the tragedy deepens. Most people never take off the mask. They live their entire lives as actors, not realizing they were cast in a play they didn't choose. They marry as the mask. They parent as the mask. They even die as the mask. And the true self, the authentic, messy, radiant soul, never sees the light of day. Let's pause and ask, who are you really? If you weren't trying to impress, please, or protect yourself, who would you be? That question terrifies most people because it threatens the mask they've invested their whole identity in. Here's a metaphor to help you see this. Imagine you're wearing a suit of armor. Heavy, shiny, protective. It keeps you safe from arrows and blows. But after years of wearing it, you forget what it feels like to walk freely, to breathe, to feel the sun on your skin. The armor isn't who you are, it's what you used to survive. The mask is the same. It's not evil. It's not false. It served a purpose. But it's not the real you. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Taking off the mask is terrifying because it means facing the shadow it was built to hide. If you let go of the strong one, you'll feel your vulnerability. If you drop the nice one, you'll feel your anger. If you release the successful one, you'll face your fear of failure. That's why most people cling to the mask. It feels safer than meeting the shadow, but wait until you hear this, because here's the paradox. The very shadow you're afraid of is the source of your authenticity. Your vulnerability makes you real. Your anger gives you power. Your selfishness teaches you self-respect. When you integrate those shadows, you don't need the mask anymore. You can be whole without hiding. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman named Lila who wore the mask of perfection. She was always polished, always smiling, always in control. People admired her, envied her, even idolized her. But inside she was exhausted. She battled anxiety, shame, and loneliness. One night she broke down. She couldn't hold the mask anymore. She admitted to a friend through tears, "I'm not okay. I'm falling apart." To her surprise, her friend didn't leave. They didn't judge. They leaned in and said, "Finally, I see the real you." That moment changed everything. Layla realized people didn't love her for her mask. They loved her in spite of it. And for the first time, she felt free. Here's the hidden truth. Authenticity isn't found in the mask. It's found in the shadow you've avoided. And until you integrate it, you'll never know who you really are. But wait until you hear this, because in the next part, we'll explore the deeper danger of ignoring the shadow. How it doesn't just shape your identity, but can also sabotage your destiny. If you don't face it, the shadow will run your life from behind the curtain, and you'll think it's fate.